Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Thursday, February 19th, 2026 at 1:02 in the afternoon. So we're beginning our day in the committee today with H205, which is an act relating to agreements not to compete. So we have our legislative counsels, Sophie Datney, with us, and haven't quite gotten to 20 yet, have you?
No, we're getting there though. So, good afternoon, Sophie Zadatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel. Can I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we're on draft 4.2. And this incorporates changes that were discussed at when the committee last took the bill up last week. So again, this bill covers, would add 2 sections to the Fair Employment Practices Act, one dealing with agreements not to compete and the other with stay or pay provisions. I'm assuming you're all pretty familiar with it at this point, so I'm just going to move forward to where the changes are. So there was a change to the healthcare provider definition. A person licensed, certified, or authorized by law to provide professional healthcare services in the state to an individual during the individual's medical care, treatment, or confinement. There had been a question raised about device, the previous definition we had in there. Non-solicitation agreements. So again, non-solicitation agreements are not agreements not to compete. There's a 1-year duration. They have to be, you can't solicit or recruit your former employers, employees, or steal their customer list and do direct solicitation. And then there's an exception on the non-solicitation piece. And it provides, and now it is limited just to healthcare providers. Before it had other categories in here, but now it just simply provides that for employees separating, healthcare provider employees separating from their employment, they're permitted to provide notice of their change of employment to the individuals that they previously provided direct healthcare to. And the notice will include the fact that they're continuing to practice their profession, their new professional contact information, and the individual's right to choose a provider. So again, the big change there is less on that, but just the fact that it's now focused solely on the healthcare provider.
It seems that my concern is someone can meet these guidelines and then proceed into a solicitation. Is that something we're dealing with later in the bill, or?
I think the general solicitation is prohibited. This is simply just allowing healthcare providers just to notify those individuals that they have a direct patient-provider relationship with, that they've now, they're now operating out of this particular building or practice. I think the concern was that often people go, they see a provider, they show up for their appointment, and they're told that provider is no longer here. Well, where are they? What are they doing? We can't tell you, so it's more that experience that it's seeking to address, so that if you have a direct relationship with a patient, you're permitted under this to notify them. But again, this is not, it's just saying that it wouldn't be a violation to let those individuals know, not that you could, again, take the whole client database of your previous employer and, send
So the no
something.
solicitation is just established in general for everything.
Right, so
Okay.
you can have
I
a
gotcha.
non-solicitation, right. And then this gets into, so again, we have exceptions. This is the prohibition on non-compete agreements. And then there's a list of exceptions. And again, some of these have not changed at all. But again, if you're selling an individual's ownership interest in a business, dissolution of a partnership, dissolution of a limited liability company, a severance agreement, again, provided that it's reasonable in its scope. And then there's a new subsection 5. This is an agreement permitted under rules approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. There was a concern around financial advisors when they leave their employment, if they're retiring, that there are agreements not to compete. If they're retiring, they have to retire in order to continue to receive commissions and things. So this would cover agreements that are permitted under rules approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And then number 6 is the one that the committee's been going back and forth with many times. The number has changed, but this now provides, again, For an exempt employee, so this doesn't, you're not allowed to have an agreement not to compete with non-exempt employees, which again are your lowest paid, typically hourly workers. But with an exempt employee, you can have an agreement not to compete if it meets each of the following criteria. So it's individually negotiated. The employee earns at least 250% of the state minimum wage, which currently would put it at around $75,000. And then this is the new language. The agreement is necessary to protect a significant business interest of the employer, other than an interest in preventing ordinary competition, where the employee's subsequent employment would inherently result in a material risk to the employer's business. And then you would have the same catch-all that, again, it has to be reasonable in time, geographical area, and scope as laid out in the previous subsection. So that's, I mean, this is one of the sort of more hotly contested pieces of the bill. So that's where it currently is. Just if there's any questions on that.
Is ordinary competition a broadly understood notion?
I mean, I really can't answer that. I mean, this is just proposed language that's being provided. I think the notion is that you can't stop somebody, have a non-compete in order to prevent someone from just, opening up a similar business or whatever. This is more, the challenge has been, I think, with this particular language is around how do you balance individuals that are highly compensated, they're in a position to do individual negotiation, they're sophisticated people, they can negotiate contracts, with also people that are lower paid but are working for a startup or have this very, key information, but maybe don't have the high salary. Because other states, a lot of states will have a salary threshold and just say you can have a non-compete if, someone's earning above a certain amount. And I think that's where the committee's been wrestling, is how to tackle this.
It's not a phrase that is very common elsewhere in statute. But that's sort of the question.
As far as I know, is statute, yes, not that I'm aware of. Okay. And then again, there was some tweaks around the healthcare providers. So there is, notwithstanding subdivision D, notwithstanding all those exceptions, this essentially provides that you cannot have agreements not to compete in healthcare services. So, and then the language was just tweaked a little bit, which is a lot of providing in, but regarding the provider's provision of healthcare services in this state shall be void and unenforceable and against public policy if the contract or agreement includes any restriction of the right of such healthcare provider to provide healthcare services in any geographical area for any period of time after the termination of such partnership, employment, or professional relationship with respect to such restriction, and makes the agreement subject to the laws of another state or requires any litigation arising out of the agreement to be conducted in another state. And again, this is focused solely on healthcare providers at this point. And then these are just technical corrections with the change in the numbering. There was, before there was language, this is the definition of a stay or pay provision. There was some language before in terms of other contracts, and that language has now gone away. So the and is added in here. So it's a more restricted. There was a concern about loans that could be made to employees, who work for banks, etc. So now a stay or pay definition includes training repayment provisions, educational repayment contracts, quit fees, damages clauses, sign-on bonuses, relocation expenses, and other types of cash payments tied to a mandatory stay period, but it removes the more general language that was previously in the bill. And I believe that is all of them. Yeah.
Thank you, so.
All right.
Good afternoon. Great to see everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm For the record, I'm Rowan Hawthorne, the Policy Director at the Department of Labor, and my understanding is you've asked me here just to talk a little bit about creating workplace posters, which is what the department does. We have a partnership with the Attorney General's office. They very frequently enforce a lot of the posters that we've created that employers are required to post in their workplaces. So we have a partnership in that sense, and we're the ones who create them. Typically, what we do is, and in this case, what we'll do is before July 1st of this year, which is when this would which is when this would be enacted if it were passed. We'd gather all the information on the two different subjects, both the agreement not to compete and then the stay or pay provision. Our wage and hour division would distill it to make sure it's accessible, make sure it's understandable by the public, by employees in a workplace. We'd create the poster. It would go through, multiple revisions. We'd have to make sure the commissioner is okay with the poster, make sure all the information is accurate. And then we typically post it to our website. And so it meets all accessibility concerns. It's the employer's duty to print it out and make sure it's in their workplace. We're not, that's not part of our jurisdiction, is ensuring that it's in the workplace. However, if we do get a complaint by someone saying that, hey, this poster isn't in our workplace, we would handle that. We'd usually just reach out to the employer and say, hey, you need to post this. If there's any concerns after that, we would probably refer them to the Attorney General's office, or we'd have a back and forth with the employer. But for the most part, we don't get pushback. It's mostly just an employer maybe not noticing or not thinking that they have to post it. There's a place on our website where we have all of the mandatory posters, and it's all part of one packet. So an employer could go online, print it all out, and post it all at the same time so that they know that they have all the posters on there. And that's pretty much it, honestly. It's a pretty easy process. Any questions? Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Rowan. Justin? Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Justin McCabe. I'm the general counsel of OnLogic. So OnLogic is based in South Burlington. It's where we have our global headquarters. We are an industrial computer manufacturer based in that focuses on small computers. So not the kind of things you're using now or the kind of things you would run Windows on, but the kind of things that are found in dirty, dusty, cold, hot environments, right? We are a niche player in the IPC market, a niche business, much like many other Vermont businesses, with a global reach. So we understand and acknowledge that we have a lot of IP, we have a lot of technology to protect. We also have individuals within our organization that have a lot of information, right? I'll give you one example. One example is myself, right? So I'm not only the general counsel, I have also served as roles as the CFO of OnLogic, and I've also served as our global head of sales. So not only do I know the legal parts of our business, but I've also been heavily involved in the back end, understanding how our supply chain is built, how our costs are built. I understand all of our key customers, and I know them, many of them personally. And obviously, my leaving OnLogic would be very detrimental to its business. We use non-competes very surgically at OnLogic. And mainly what I mean by that is we focus on our executive team, those people who understand our future plans and our roadmaps, as well as our key sellers, right? The people with key customer relationships that would ultimately pose a material risk to us losing them and potentially going to a direct competitor. And unless we think this isn't really a thing, like our sellers are getting calls on a routine basis from our competitors trying to enter the US market. We're fortunate in that we are the leader in North America in terms of providing industrial computers. And as such, we're a target, right? So many of our sellers are considered targets. We also understand that overuse of non-competes is a problem. Like there is a reason that this legislation is needs to be put into place, and that what the committee is going to be considering in terms of wage thresholds, we agree with. In terms of the reasonableness factors, we agree with. And in terms of the language that is currently proposed that I reviewed, that was just on the board, OnLogic also agrees with. We think we can live within the language that is proposed in that way. So with that, concludes my testimony, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much.
Well, nailed it.
Just yes. Devin?
afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I think this is my first time in the committee this year. Devin Green, Vermont Association of Hospitals and Health Systems. We represent all of Vermont's hospitals, all of which are nonprofit. I can tell you, in terms of non-compete clauses, our hospitals do not use them, so this bill won't have an impact in that area. And I think we are comfortable with the language here for the pay to stay provision and the healthcare specific language. I think the only potential change we'd like to see is in the section around the pay to stay. So section 3 of the bill, 495 RC5, so the very, very bottom of page 8. That has we can only require repayment of a stay to pay benefit if the employee voluntarily separates from employment or is terminated for cause. That makes sense to me. The only thing we'd like to add there is, or is terminated during their probationary period. And that could be a reasonable probationary period of 6 months or something along those lines. But my understanding is, if someone's terminated under that time, we would potentially, we don't want to pay a big cash payment and then, someone may just not be the right fit and, they're not necessarily terminated for a cause, but they're just not fitting into the organization. That would be a tough outcome for the hospital.
The risk that any business is taking when they hire someone and they bring them through training and then they find out they're not a fit.
Yeah, but I think normally we would have that in the contract of, this benefit occurs if you meet your probationary period, and this legislation is taking that ability away from us.
This is relocation and sign-on bonus mainly.
Right, yes.
We'll have to ask Sophie. I'm just wondering, within a contract, so if you have an employment contract and you're saying we're providing you with this, but if you're not a good fit, then you have to pay us back.
During the probationary
Right.
period, yeah.
Is that how your contracts are currently written?
I don't know about all the hospital contracts, but I also think, I think it could be administratively burdensome for hospitals to have to document a for-cause piece when someone's released during their probationary period, when that's specifically a period where, they're not on permanently. It's we're testing things out. Usually if it just doesn't work out, the hospital is able to let them go without having to make the case that it was for cause. And I think we'd want the same flexibility too.
I guess it's really a policy decision for the committee, and I understand the burden to the hospital. I guess it's, part of the intent, as I understand it, behind this legislation is folks that aren't in a position to repay things. And so I just wonder about the ability of somebody to repay it.
I would say in particular, a sign-on bonus. I could
You
understand
don't pay your sign-on bonus up front.
during the
right?
probationary period.
Generally,
Pay at the
after,
end, too.
it might be in the
I mean-
contract, it may be a year after, a year, if you stay with us a year, here's your sign-on bonus. Because I can see somebody for even 6 months, and once you've completed your probationary period, we're gonna pay you your sign-on bonus. But
Yeah.
I don't know that any business would pay it up front because then they lose the ability to really collect it again.
I mean, I've definitely seen desperate times calling for desperate measures in the hospital space.
Yeah, we can, I guess we need to noodle it, so.
Okay.
I think it's part of part of the desperation that we're in, right? I don't think it's just a hospital. All the businesses trying to bring people in, but if they make a choice to pay, say they're gonna pay a sign-on bonus and they pay it up front, that's a risk that they're taking.
A risk of not vetting employees will.
Right. And again, currently, we could contract to say, we're paying you up front, but if you have a, you know, if you are let go during your probationary period, we ask that it be paid back. And this would take that ability out of our hands.
So any of the hospitals that currently do this, and that's happened, are they able to get the money back? Do they actually go after the employee, the former employee?
They generally do not go after the former employee, but in egregious cases, we would like that ability.
Well, if there's an egregious and it's for cause.
No, I guess an egregious case would be like,
if it
they
was
say,
used
they
now-
sign on and it's, you know, the next day we have a issue with the employee. That's not necessarily for cause. It's just a culture issue or, you know, something that is designed for the probationary period.
Yeah, it's just answer this already. So are the contracts structured so that the payments made during the probationary period or, I mean, I would thinking of drafting a contract, you know.
Yeah, there's no set, each hospitals might have a different approaches to contracts. So they could structure it all different ways at this point. But this would take some of that ability away from them.
Just seems to get structured, the contract to deal with the issue pretty quick. But we'll talk about it.
By saying you don't get paid, I mean, a sign-on bonus to a lot of employees feels like I'm signing on. Yeah,
If they know upfront they're not getting it until after their probationary period, that they want to be a good employee. Something for us to think about.
okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
The non-solicitation piece that's in there for medical,
Yeah, we are okay with the non-solicitation piece as long as, and this is already covered by HIPAA, but we don't want employees, you know, farming patient data and contracting them. So I think that's the only concern with that.
no. When I had procedure done, surgeon that I had left the hospital, went to another, and they notified me. The
Yeah.
hospital notified me that
Yes.
the surgeon left. You can either get a new surgeon here, or you can, here's where he's at.
Right, right. And it's all okay with the patient's permission, right? You know, if the provider says to the patient, is it okay if I contact you about this? That's fine.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it. First of all, illuminating to be with you. I talked to Calvin Cutler earlier. And he said, no way could he testify? So I said, I'll take the bullet. But, and so maybe I should start with, for the record, my name's Jay Barton. I'm the Vice President General Manager of WCAX Channel 3 and WYCI, which are two TV stations, websites, et cetera, serving hopefully all of you every day. But in terms of the overall language that I've seen in this bill, especially when I compare it to as introduced to the most recent revisions from this morning. It from where I sit, seems to be pretty thoughtful. In 30 seconds, the way that we employ service contracts for personnel, there's essentially two tiers. One, which is for on-air talent, because their likeness is going to be representative of the organization. And then for sales talent, because obviously they're going to have access to financial information. So the preservation of NDAs, non-solicitation, I feel like that language, at least in our industry, seems to be consistent with the way that we would behave anyway. Pardon me, I'm still growing up. My voice is changing here. But I did have a question about compensation. I like the idea of the percentage sliding scale as opposed to as introduced when it was a flat $100,000, because I would have questioned, why not 999? Why not 1001? So I like the sliding scale percentage. My question though, and you may have had this discussion already, so I apologize for my ignorance, but was the conversation at any point the value of the additional benefits, 401k match, those types of things, which are expensive to the employer and they are a part of the compensation, right? Like just as much as I expect maybe a signing bonus like you were just talking about, or moving expenses, or my actual paycheck, God forbid. I also, if I'm engaging in a full-time role, is there anybody here who would accept one without, medical benefits, without at a bare minimum? And then, like in our case, we offer a 401k match, which is a cash investment to the employee. So my question is, has that discussion been had or considered? And I apologize if I'm bringing up something that is that's already been settled.
I can say something. So we discussed it and we chose to include basically the salary, retirement, contributions to retirement included, not necessarily the employer match, but the employees' contribution to retirement accounts, things like bonuses, commission, but not the benefits. The idea, we were really putting thought into setting a salary floor that was a reasonably livable wage, right? So something that enough that we were not capturing, that we were capturing higher paid individuals.
Yeah, my sense, just doing the math on the 250, is that puts it right into the sort of
75,000.
Yeah, exactly. So the median income for the state right now would be in that range. So yeah,
that was the thought process.
Okay. So I think my only note would be there are employers who are making a hard cash benefit. If I donate, let's say 3% of my income to my 401k, your income increases by 3%. You just can't access it until retirement time. So that is included. Okay, great. Apologies again for my
contributions, I guess, would be the employers.
I pulled the language up.
Yeah, my very close reading, obviously, of this document. The lawyers love this. Thanks, Jess. Let's see. So generally, I otherwise haven't really seen anything here that caused me significant pause. The conversation that was just had with regard to the healthcare space is the only other item that kind of triggered something for me in the moment, which was moving expenses. We are often in our industry, whether it is taking somebody who, for instance, lives in Brattleboro and we're moving them to South Burlington or vice versa. There might be moving expenses to that. And then often we have talent who are coming from other places and we are bringing them in. So I would be interested in maybe making sure that if there are any signing bonuses that are allowed to be recouped, that we make sure that we don't accidentally remove that, because sometimes that can be a relatively costly thing and it's a regular practice for all media. And that's a hard upfront cost and there's no way around it, right? Because they can't start working until they move here, we hope. Anyway, so those are sort of my 2 cents looking at it from where we are, because I think generally we want to create a good working environment where people don't want to leave and do want to stay. So having reasonable restrictions on when a non-compete can be enacted does not seem incongruous with what we're already trying to do with employment. So that's what I have to say. So I don't know if there are any other questions.
Perfect.
Trying to understand the concern. So was it the things like moving expenses, stuff like that? Was that in the context of the stay or pay provision or non-compete provision?
Really around the stay or pay,
Stay.
really around that idea that if we're going to dissolve a contract,
Right.
because this is starting to expand to have some of those kind of ramifications. I just want to make sure it isn't unintentionally delimited from something that might be, because let's say I moved a person and I gave them $5,000 and then they immediately flame out for some reason. I think healthcare is actually pretty analogous to the amount of, it's a sort of, the pay's not great, but at least the hours stink, that kind of thing. So sometimes these things happen and you just get it to a place where we want to be able to tell people up front, here's the expectation. Either way, we hope you'll succeed and we're going to support you succeed. But if it, for whatever reason, that one time in 100 where it goes the wrong way, and we just for whatever reason can't, I think similar to healthcare, we don't enforce a lot of these provisions in full all the time. Instead, you sort of reserve the sort of Damocles for significant people. There is still a human making a decision. It's not mechanical, I guess is what I'm saying. I just don't want that to be lost.
I think the concept of state is that they are okay as long as you meet, certain conditions.
Yeah.
One of those included the employee just it's not a good fit. Leave, or there's things are not working out. That's not a good idea. So move on. So in those kinds of circumstances, the way I'm reading it, you would be able to enter in the state kind of provision because that would be accepted. That would be part of the deal.
Yeah, so that would, okay, all right. So because I will say that I was trying to parse kind of the most recent revisions and they were sent over to me and I was looking at an older version. So.
Quickly.
Yeah, that's right. I was too slow. I was reading an older version, unfortunately. So yeah. All right, but that's it. So I think to your point, very likely this language has already sort of opened up that area and made it something that we can deal with. Because I'm not, by and large, I understand the intent of this, and I think from our perspective, it's not unreasonable. So yeah. So thank you very much.
Chris?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. For the record, Chris Delia, President, Vermont Bankers Association. Once again, sorry I can't join you, but best not to share what continues to be sicknesses in my family that like to make the rounds.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, or maybe commerce is killing me this year. I'm not sure which, but we'll see.
I apologize, Chris.
No, all good. I did get the draft around 12:45, so I'm scrambling to look through 385 and get ready for 2:00. But on H205,
12 o'clock now.
Oh no, I've got to be in judiciary at 2:00 today.
Oh, that's right, you do.
So, on H205, I just want to say that I truly appreciate where the committee has come from and the work that you've done, especially Herb and Abby working with all of the interested parties. I think that this bill has really come a long way to try and strike a balance. You folks have been kind to listen to me and take into consideration my issues. And at some point, as we know in these processes, you've got to kind of draw the line and make the decision to move a bill or not. And you're probably at that point now, and that makes sense. Probably on page 3C, we'll continue to garner some comments along the way. That would be my guess. And I will say that if I hear anything from my members and their perspective on any of the bill as it continues to make its way through the process, I will certainly keep you folks updated. But again, I thank you for what you've done on this draft and how far we've come with developing a non-compete bill.
Any questions for Chris? Hey, Chris, thank you.
No problem. Good luck.
Thank you.
Get better.
Gary?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you again. Carrie Allen from the Association of Vermont Credit Unions. I'm happy to report that credit unions are generally supportive of this bill. It isn't a practice significantly to have used non-compete clause in our employment practices. Generally, this would apply as it relates to severance agreements. We're particularly supportive of the language around non-solicitation of employees. That would be an important clause for us. And so we appreciate the work that's been done, but we're happy to say that credit unions are supportive of this language. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Carrie? Great. Thank you. Megan?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Megan Sullivan, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify. I want to start, because I think it's my first time with you this year, with a bit of broader context, and because I think it matters for how we're evaluating this bill. When we look at Vermont's regulatory environment through both the Vermont Chamber's Business Climate Survey and the Vermont Competitiveness Dashboard that was developed by the Vermont Futures Project, a consistent picture emerges. Vermont employers are operating in a state that is struggling with economic momentum and where regulation is already a significant concern. On the Vermont Competitiveness Dashboard, Vermont ranks last in the nation in economic momentum, reflecting slow growth in population, workforce, and overall economic activity. That lack of momentum affects employers' ability to expand and attract talent and make long-term investments. On the same dashboard, Vermont ranks 7th nationally for regulatory burden, placing us amongst the more heavily regulated states in the country. Those macro indicators align closely with what employers told us directly in the Vermont Chamber's most recent Business Climate Survey. When asked about top challenges facing their businesses, regulation and regulatory burdens ranked among the top concerns, alongside workforce availability, housing, and rising costs. Employers cited the cumulative effect of regulation as a factor that makes operating in Vermont more difficult and less competitive. That context matters because regulation itself is not inherently bad. But when the state is already last in economic momentum, and regulation is one of the top concerns raised by employers, it is especially important that new regulation are clearly tied to well-defined Vermont problems and are narrowly tailored to address it. In this case, I want to be clear that we have heard compelling testimony that a real problem exists in the healthcare sector. Across access to care and patient choice are critical issues for Vermont, and the Vermont Chamber appreciates the legislature taking those concerns seriously. The healthcare provisions in the bill are well-grounded and respond to a clearly articulated need. Outside of healthcare, I want to directly acknowledge concerns that Representative Booten has raised, asking, what problem is this bill solving? Because it's a fair question and it deserves space in the conversation. Outside of healthcare testimony we heard, are we convinced that the bill is solving a distinctly Vermont problem that existing Vermont case law is not already handling when it comes to non-compete agreements? Frankly, we aren't, given that Vermont courts have long applied a reasonableness standard that has limited overreach and protected employee mobility without broad statutory prohibition. On that, I think it's important to be precise about examples that are used in this discussion. We have all heard the sandwich shop example. For the record, that was a Jimmy John's in New York in 2016, not a Vermont restaurant. I would be remiss if I did not stand up for the restaurants that we represent and make it clear that this is not something we understand to be occurring or even in the realm of consideration at all in Vermont's restaurant industry. All that said, I am here to represent my members, not elected to make policy decisions or choose priorities. This issue has been under discussion for many years. It has been a clear priority for many years, and it was a defined intention to move on this legislation this year. When that happened, the Vermont Chamber believes it is better to be at the table helping shape legislation than standing outside the room simply voicing opposition. In that regard, I want to commend this committee for the process you have followed on this over the last biennium and prior. The level of engagement with local stakeholders and impacted parties is a shining example of how legislation should be developed when multiple interests are involved. You have been inclusive and invited everyone to the table in working through challenges in and out of the committee. That process was done with intention and has meaningfully improved the bill. At this point, the Vermont Chamber believes H205 is generally in a good place, with one remaining area that we would like to see some additional refinement. That issue is subsection 6C on page 5. And this has been one that's been going back and forth for a while. See Abby smiling. As drafted, the requirement that an employer demonstrate that an employee's subsequent employment would inherently result in a material risk to the employer's business may be extremely difficult to meet, even when there is a real risk. That word material, I think, is the challenge. I think a modest clarification that ties the standard more clearly to the employee's level of responsibility or creates different thresholds, use or rather than and, would resolve the concern while preserving the bill's intent and safeguards.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, so instead of it being and, for the and this, and this, and this, make that an or.
Oh. I hear you.
A, C, D, becoming A.
Or A, B, D, or C.
Ah.
So that is our one area that I'd like to mention. In closing, we appreciate the thoughtful work that has gone into this bill, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Just to be clear, we did have examples from Vermont employees who were caught under when they weren't on the restaurant. Anything else, they were some professionals and. But it is happening.
Okay.
Don't know to what extent, but, and sometimes. Although the courts are open, there's people that can't afford to hire an attorney. So we really don't, it's hard to get full extent problem here.
But we appreciate the process that this has gone through. And inclusive it's been. So thank you.
Yes.
Afternoon, David Nickenberg here on behalf of Working Vermont. Generally, we are Working Vermont okay with the current draft. We have one suggested change on page 5, section 6B. We like the framework as it currently exists, and the only change that we would suggest is around the total compensation number, which is currently set at 250% of the state minimum wage, and we would suggest that go to 300%. So under the current proposal that this which council said, that would be around $75,000. That's $25,000 less than as introduced, which was set threshold at $100,000. And it's about $75,000 less than the Federal Trade Commission suggested, which was a little over $151,000, which was a nationwide ban on non-competes. And I actually appreciate the income threshold being tied to a percentage of minimum wage. allow for adjustments over time, even though those adjustments are often very incremental as the minimum wage moves up very slowly. So if we're really trying to help working Vermonters, which I think we all are here, and I very much appreciate this bill and the work that's gone into it, and everyone's participation in it. From our perspective, we should be as expansive as reasonably possible. And when we look at what it actually costs for people to live in Vermont, particularly if they have children, someone trying to make it in Vermont financially is actually much higher than the 250% of the minimum wage. We're talking about a livable wage. It would be higher. The minimum wage is set at $14.42. And so for somebody, for instance, I looked at the MIT's livable wage calculator for Vermont, a person with one child would be required to make $97,000 to meet their basic needs. That's taking into account healthcare, childcare, and all of those factors. Vermonter living with two children would be required to, a single parent living with two children would be required to make around $134,000 to meet their basic livable needs. So, and I think we're intending to protect the ability of working Vermonters to gain new employment and prevent the limitations of their employment options. We should just be reasonable in our vote. It's a suggestion. I understand where we are in this process. This is the first opportunity I've had to weigh in on that particular piece since it changed from 100,000 to 250. I'll stop there. So appreciate it. If you just, for your information, if you were to go to 300%, it would be somewhere in the $90,000 would be the threshold. So it's still below the $100,000 threshold set in the original version. If you were to decide to split the difference and go to 275, it would be around $82,000, which seems reasonable. This would put Vermont somewhere in the middle of states, places like Oregon and Washington. Their thresholds are in the 130, 150, other states much higher, some other states are lower. So I feel like going to 300% or 275 would be put Vermont somewhere in the middle with states with similar provisions. So that would be my one requested change. Other than that, I think, as others have said, I've participated in this process through the summer and fall in good faith. I think we've done a lot of good work and really appreciate where you've landed in this draft. And I really do appreciate your effort to protect Vermonters' freedoms, frankly, to go seek employment that works for them. So thank you.
Questions for David? Okay. All right, David, thank you.
Thank you.
For requests, people can do. I think it's probably from Herb and Abby. You're the ones that really put the work into it.
Yeah. Well,
Sure. But we did work on it together. I think we worked pretty hard to try to, there's so many different businesses who have, their own structure and category. And understandably, they had different perspectives, trying to fit something like this into their own business. Did try to hear from a lot of folks, and especially around that 6C, I guess it is, around how you apply that and trying to fit it into that particular business. I think I'm hearing that we managed to accommodate at least most of the concerns. I heard, I'm surprised Jamie's not here, but so I think we tried to do that. I think we did pretty well.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that language. I think,
Yeah. The wage threshold itself, I'm comfortable with just that. I really am that clear. I definitely appreciate the testimony that David just provided. And I'm thinking about I know the chiropractor situation was a lower amount, but I think it kind of illustrative of the kind of problems you get into where someone who is salaried, but may not be able to, really assert her rights, in terms of whether that was fair or not. Whatever the committee, wants to do on that level, I'm comfortable with, but I definitely appreciate that particular aspect of it. What else should we talk about?
Yeah, can I
You
go
go
in there?
ahead. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I think, we put a lot of work into that C one, trying to think through various scenarios and how it would apply. I appreciate Megan's point about the material risk, but I don't know that conversations we had, I think that language fits the kinds of agreements that we want to cover. And then the wage threshold, I'm comfortable with 250. I'm also comfortable with 300%. I think that was a scenario where we were trying to think of like that startup scenario in the tech sector where there's highly technical, small team, maybe they're starting out at a little bit of a lower wage. That was why we moved it to the 250%. So, and then the third piece this was one that I had not thought of. So I think I want to think about that a little bit, was the stay or pay provision about whether or not it could be repayable if it's within the probationary period. My initial reaction is they can just set up a contract where you get paid at the end of the probationary period. I understand moving expenses is an upfront cost. So I think that is really worth thinking about. And maybe we define what a probationary period we'd have to define what a probationary period is. And so those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and on that one, I totally understand that concern. Putting in a lawyer contract, drafting hat. I would think that a lawyer would be able to, figure out a contract to deal with that kind of situation, but that was just my initial take on it.
Yeah, because you'd think it's a little extra paperwork, but during a probationary period, you could also document it to terminate for cause, right?
But not only that, but you
Maybe
know,
not. You don't want to.
Okay.
You want to.
Yeah, we got it.
The issue with the probationary period is it gives you that ability to terminate without having to document.
Yeah.
And if it's not a good fit, it's very hard to document, but that's what that's designed for. So I understand that probationary period piece, and I could go with, probationary period not longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
Like
That makes sense.
something like that could be reasonable in there,
Yeah.
but
That makes sense.
the rest of it. You just know that, businesses can pay, $20,000 to $50,000 to move somebody. That's a big expense for a business, and you're doing it for an employee to fit a specific role because you think that they're going to be a good fit, but you don't know until they're with you every day. So, that resonated.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
It makes sense. It does make sense. It's just sort of a scenario we hadn't thought of when we were working on this. So.
People okay with the 6-month probationary period?
Yeah, I would just say, we want to make sure we don't fall off either end of the log. And, what's the potential for abuse? Can somebody, maybe it's not good cause, but they just don't get along, like say, oh, sorry. What I think of is someone goes through the time and expense to move here. And maybe it doesn't work out. And, oh, by the way, not only do you not have a job, but you're going to pay us back $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for our moving expenses. What's that gonna do to this poor person who just came here?
There's two sides to the coin, right?
There it is.
But on the other side, the business is in good faith, has negotiated and believes that this is going to be a good fit based on interviews and everything. And then when it comes down to brass tacks, and they start working, find out that their work ethic may not be well, or they just don't get along with the other employees. There could be a whole host of different issues and I think that's why it's probationary period. And hopefully there's I would assume that there's something in the employment contract that would say that, you know, during the probationary period, if it doesn't work out, then you're responsible to pay back relocation expenses or whatever.
I think I'm okay with it if it's disclosed.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make sure
Yeah.
that people don't know.
It would be very clear.
Yeah.
Would need to be at that individually negotiated contract.
So that's something you can add in, Sophie?
Yeah, so on bottom of page 8, lines 21, 22, so it would be only required retained if the employee voluntarily separates from employment. Or is terminated during their probationary period. Or is terminated for cause and then probationary period, they would specify that was up to 6 months.
Do we want to define that it needs to be that the employer needs to disclose?
So just on that, I mean, in order to have a stable pay provision, that would be permitted under this, there are a number of criteria. So one of them is the employee voluntarily agrees to the provision in exchange for benefit. The repayment amount is reasonable and does not exceed the cost to the employer of the benefit received by the employee. The repayment amount is specific and provided to the employee before the employee agrees to the provision. The length of the stay period is reasonable based on a number of factors, such as the cost of the benefit bestowed, value of the benefit to the employee, and whether the repayment amount decreases over the course of the stay period. And then the provision only requires repayment if the employee voluntarily separates, is terminated for cause, or if it's during the probationary period. So that it would be transparent to the employee.
Um, I guess what I'm thinking also is, and this is, no dig on anybody, but what if there are issues with management or with the company with regards to, I mean, I'm sure there would be protections for things like retaliatory behavior and things like that. But I'm also thinking about when we have fit, oftentimes that can be code for racism or sexism or gender discrimination or, homophobia, transphobia. So I'm trying to weigh that. I'm just gonna put that on the table. I'm just trying to weigh that. Glad you called it out that way. It's important.
Other requests that we had, what are people thinking? Are we comfortable with 250%?
I'm going up to.
I'm good with 3.
Told you what I thought. But I'm willing to go, with everybody.
Is that a yes, a 3?
Looks like it.
Okay. And the question that Megan raised on material,
Yeah. She suggested doing an or between C and D.
or remove period.
Yeah, I mean, what is a lawyerly difference between material risk or just risk?
Oh,
Like, does that change the meaning if we take out material? I just don't.
I suppose. I mean, lawyers always try to put material
see what
in
Sophie
there.
thinks.
Yeah, in the sense, yeah, maybe Sophie has a thought of that. It always has to be material, I would think, because it has to relate to the competitive interest and what you're trying to protect and stuff. What do you think, Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have material in there, then it could just be a minimal risk or.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it makes
I don't see
sense.
the material, that's
Yeah,
kind of. a lawyer
Seems like
kind
the
of
whole
thing.
point of this is that there's some kind of a risk, is that there is an actual risk.
Yeah. The other point that Megan raised around changing the and for more, I'm not sure. That's, I think unintentionally maybe a really big deal.
Yeah.
Well, right now you have to have all 3.
That's
Right.
right. And D is important. D needs to, it has to be D. D has to be included because that says that the agreement is reasonable in time, geographic.
So
variations.
that would be D or C. But you have to have C and D as well. Right?
Okay, you have to have, D is really
has to be
important.
in there, period.
D is a must. Yeah, D is a
They all,
must.
it has to be negotiated.
Yeah.
So the or would be, yeah. I don't know how you. And,
Yeah, I think the question is just, do we change any of the words in C?
yeah,
I think that really
yeah,
is.
I think you need all.
You need A, B, and D you need.
I mean, I couldn't thought we were trying to construct a standard under which statutorily, what's a reasonable non-compete? And there, I think the way we were thinking about it is there are a bunch of different. We just separated them out into A through D.
And they're really included in case law. Both, that is C and D, I think, are included in case law.
My turn. Were you looking at me for that?
No,
Oh, okay, sorry.
I didn't. Herb was looking at Sophie.
That's what happened.
No, I was looking at Mike, actually.
Innocent Ruth.
He's had his hand up.
I mean, I'm gonna be the person that's dragging my feet on this. I'm really concerned that our businesses, that, you know, the climate survey that the chamber did, it said regulatory is a problem. And, you know, and Megan did mention, you know, we're top, what, 7 in the regulatory issues, which has been a problem that I've heard a lot about. If we could somehow make it so that the businesses could sign on, that would be, it would certainly make me feel better about it, but as everybody knows from the beginning, I've been like super hateful of this bill. You know, I think that no competes for people that you don't feel comfortable making salary. Okay, fine. But it's really a problem for me. And that's what I'm gonna say.
Do you not like the salary level or which part of it?
I don't think we should be, I personally don't, I'm not overly thrilled about regulating it anyway, because it's contractual law. And if I sign a contract, that's on me and the business. And with that being said, I can feel comfortable with, if you're a business and you're not willing to put somebody on salary, I feel comfortable with the idea of doing the no competes. But when we start getting into that like salary issue and you become an exempt employee, to me, it just changes the field on responsibilities, on what you're expected to do, whether or not you have access to information. That's where I stand on that. Could you get me to a place where I swallow my indigestion on it and vote for it? Probably. But when I'm hearing from people that are doing business in Vermont who, you know, economic development, that's what we are. You know, we're supposed to be helping economic development.
We are also a consumer protection.
You're right. I'm not sure.
Strike that balance.
And I get that. I'm not sure that there's, I'm not positive there's a lot of issues. It's just me, Mike. I mean, honestly, and Michael, sorry. You can. I mean,
I understand what you're saying and I understand what the metrics are. And I do get the conversation about Vermont and business and difference. But I also think that that survey also talked about employee retention, employee satisfaction. And I think that the flip side of this is that it may make the employment relationship a little more stable for people. It might actually make these jobs more attractive if they know that there's a little bit more give and take.
I get it. And I'll also state that, you know, I don't know how far the bill will go beyond this committee. And we also have to take that into consideration. And, you know, when the business community is concerned about it, we should try to pass a bill out of here that everybody's like, you know what, this is a good bill. But It's just my opinion. And you guys have heard it like over and over again, and I apologize.
There has been, the business community has been deeply involved in this bill, deeply involved.
Yeah.
And there's one little piece that may not be crazy about. But I think for you to say that the business community now is gonna come out and try to stop this bill, I don't see that. We have businesses here now that said they're comfortable.
I was gonna repeat part of that, you know, we've worked really hard to try to bring in people, and we really try to be sensitive to what their individual, and they're all kind of different spot. We're trying to be sensitive and trying to put something.
I get it.
But let me put it at the freedom and liberty level. You know, it's all about a free market economy. Right? And have free market economy, you gotta have competition. So, and I think courts and everybody kind of agrees with that. This is just, so these kind of agreements, you know, inherently are sort of anti-competitive, but we're saying for good reasons, that's okay. If you put restraints on competition, and we've tried to tailor it, you know, to be as accommodating as possible to different ends. So that's my pitch on liberty and freedom.
Great. I'll just say something really quick, which is I was an employer for 21 years, and I had the experience of having, that I can think of, at least 3 employees leave to go to a direct competitor. And I understood they were offered, but honestly, better jobs. And that is part of the deal with competing, right? You need to compete. And then later, as my business was more mature, and we hired people who came from competitors, same thing. I was able to offer them a better job. And I had one employee left, started a business, and then solicited my customers. You know, that was a bummer, but I didn't have a non-solicitation agreement with him, but that was a lesson learned. I should have. So, you know, I'll just say, I think that, you know, as a former employer, I would have been comfortable with this. I would have been like, you know, if I had an employee who was making more than $90,000 and was, you know, talking to my key employees, then that isn't, or key customers, and had, you know, deep knowledge of things about the business. That is the point where I think it's appropriate to be able to have a non-compete. But I think that that's also part of the risk of being an employer, is that you need to compete for, just like you're competing for customers, you're competing for employees, and you're providing the best jobs that you can. And so this, to me, strikes a good balance. And we did work very closely with many members of the business community, and I think came to a good place that maybe is not exactly what people wanted, but is pretty close.
And I just need to be clear, because I saw you guys there like until 6 o'clock at night, right? And you guys were working hard, and I don't want you to think that that's what I'm saying. I just, I'm so far to the other side on this that to get me anywhere close, I would, it's difficult. It's difficult. And you know what? We're all different. And
you know, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is that you're saying that the business community now, we're doing this for nothing, because when it goes out on the floor, the business community is going to come out and they're going to try to stop the bill. And we're not hearing that, because we work closely. I think what you heard from Megan was that they were actually grateful that we were working closely with them. So, I mean, to say that is probably maybe disingenuous. I understand where you're coming from, and that's your opinion, but I don't, unless you know something that the rest of us don't know, then
a lot of things.
But
I apologize for the comment of saying that the business community has a problem with the bill. Let me rephrase it. I think there's still some lingering concerns. That's,
sure.
And I get that.
Yeah.
And I apologize for not specifying it.
And I think that generally, when we get a bill out, we know a bill is good as when not everyone is totally satisfied.
Or maybe nobody's satisfied.
So, I mean, I think we're at a good place. We've made a lot of concessions to everyone. And I think, I really, to Sophie and to Abby and to her, for really working hard on this bill. I mean, we started this, I think in 2018 or 2019, and, we finally got to a place where I think people can live with this, and we can protect Vermonters that need the protections and still protect the business community that need the protections as well, from non-disclosures, non-competes, and non-solicitations, and protect them too when it comes to pay or stay. So, or stay or pay. So I mean, I think we've done our jobs, and I commend everybody. So Sophie, if you could make those changes.
I've made them. Do you want to see them? Very fast, because
I need to get to UVM and to our state colleges because we're doing budget right now. Are you available after the floor?
Yeah.
So, let's see if we can move 2 bills today.
Yeah. Wow. Mark up and vote after this.
So let's put this on, 10 minutes after the floor, and then we'll do, 6:39 after that. Try to move that. Okay, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Thank you for working with us. We really appreciate it.
I'm just kidding.
I don't think 4 is gonna be long today, but,
We could have some.
if you just provide us. Be here, I think we can still move it.
Very, very.
As long as you don't have anything.
Right, yeah.
Right, I'll just look at that too.
Okay.
I'll try and be here as long as.
Okay.
Believe it or not, like,
You can send us one.
This-
Just highlights it.
just for clarity, I don't take personal.
Copy.
Yeah, you sure, sorry.
No, and I don't. It's one of those things that I've been on the losing end of so many votes in my past. This is nothing.
Me too.
Further along.
As an employee. Need people. Exactly. You know what I mean? Yeah, you need fresh blood, you need all that stuff and just give it up all day. Exactly. It's always in your best interest. No. Gosh. No, that's what we're gonna do. We get overly entrenched. For sure. That happens a lot. Absolutely. When there's not a lot of options. Exactly.
Remember, everyone was still on live.
Oops.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Such a great job.
Okay, so now we're switching gears. We're going back to budget discussion. So we have UVM and our state colleges and BZAC with us this afternoon. So we have Wendy Koenig with us from UVM. Wendy, thank you for coming in with us. Discussion we'd like to have is what's UVM looking at over and above your regular allocation in the budget. I think, we'd like to know how the Green Mountain retention program is going, how much dollars are left in there. And, if things are starting to percolate there, maybe that's another place where we would recommend more dollars going with, if that seems to be working, depending on what the data shows.
Okay. Wendy Koenig, Director of Government Relations for the University of Vermont. Thanks for having me in. So our budget asks this year, President Trump sort of laid them out a little bit when she was here, but we've asked for a 3% increase to our general fund appropriation. We've asked for $1 million a year for 5 years for the Vermont Cancer Center. That ask is specifically to help them roll out rural healthcare programs related to cancer in the county. And then something that we discussed and talked about a little bit at length when we were here before is the governor's recommend of $15 million for a state investment in completing our multi-purpose center. So those are the things that are on the table that that were in the governor's budget that we've discussed before. I'll mention two other things that I think are relevant to this committee, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. But one is the Tech Hub. This committee was very generous in offering us funding for the Tech Hub last year, which has really helped us to, I think everybody is aware that we had received a $24 million federal grant to an award to start the Tech Hub program. That award was rescinded with a change in administration. And the Department of Commerce has now reopened the Tech Hub competition. And so the University of Vermont has resubmitted our application. We've made it to the second round, which is really good news. And we have 5 different sections of that application. All 5 have been accepted. We just finished the questionnaire part for round 2. So we are expecting that we'll have an answer on that Tech Hub program probably by beginning of April. But part of what the investment that the state put in and some other private dollars that we received from a foundation have helped us do is to start that program rolling and start building up the technology that we need to get it up and running. So it's not at the scope that the federal dollars will allow us to do, but the money that you all were generous in helping us receive has helped us to still be moving it forward. If we do receive that federal award, it'll be $30 million. So it will really jumpstart the work that we do, particularly with development of technology for Vermont companies related to GAN.
I'm just curious what the timeline is, just finding out.
I think we're gonna, I mean, it's always, they'll never tell us like a specific date, but the applications were, the second round application questionnaire was due this week. So we are hearing beginning of April for the disbursement of awards. What we hear on the ground from DC, from different folks in the delegation and folks on Commerce Committee staff, is that there's a good chance that the 6 that were awarded last time and then rescinded are likely to get them again. We've had to make some changes to them based on the program changing slightly, but we've all done that. And I think that unless there's something really strange going on, I think there's a good possibility that the 6 that were funded before will get funded in this round. And there may be more that are funded in this round, but I think the folks that have received those awards will probably get funded. So Tech Hub is one. And then the second thing is Green Mountain Jobs and Retention. So we're right now in year 3 of that program. And I spoke to, I think many of you in here know Tricia Coates, who used to work for the state colleges and now runs the Leahy Center at the university, and her shop is in charge of Green Mountain Jobs and Retention. We're also partnering with VSAC on that. They've been really helpful to us, especially in the build out of that program. It has not fared as well as we had hoped it would. We've spent a great deal of time, effort, marketing the program on the radio, in every school system in the state, nationally, at all the colleges. We put it out to lots of different places. And our expectation was that we would be able to fund 400 people each year for it. And the highest uptake rate we've had is 240. So there's still money left that we are still distributing to folks. So I think that it was a really amazing idea. It's been harder to get people to take it up than we had envisioned. And I think that we've talked before about the fact that in a lot of programs, we see, at least from our experience at UVM, that it's more effective to give people scholarship dollars up front than it is to give loan forgiveness or other programs on the back end. And I think that, I know that there are other programs in the state that have done better than this one that are targeted at specific professions like nursing. So the nursing loan forgiveness programs seem to have a lot of uptake and do really well. This one that has been more general has been harder to fill. So that's the honest answer about how that program is going.
You think has any, marketing of it. I don't, I wouldn't think through the colleges, but through the business community.
So we've worked with the business community too, and they've really hit it with everything they can do in terms of the marketing and even if I'm remembering correctly, consulted with a firm about helping them with it. And so they've really tried very hard at the marketing part, and the businesses have been good about doing it too, but it doesn't really seem to be attracting people in the way that we thought it would.
Well, I mean, it was a nice pilot project.
Absolutely.
And I think we did capture some people staying here that probably wouldn't have stayed.
Yep.
So it's good to know that we should think of other things that we can do that can provide more in other areas that will help keep people here. So.
When I was, Michelle Carodi has been in here before and Tricia has been in here before, and I talked to both of them about it in anticipation of this. And one of the things that they were suggesting is maybe it would be better to house it in the Department of Labor. And maybe just given the work that they do, maybe they would have better luck getting people to take it. And so that's one idea. And I'll leave that to the committee to think about. But if you have further questions about it, please let me know.
Thank you.
We will continue to support the folks that have signed up for it and until we can.
How much money is left approximately?
I don't, but I'll find out for you. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, VSAC is a partner in this, right?
VSAC is a partner with us. They absolutely helped us in particular set it up and manage the flow of the dollars. Yeah.
I'm thinking about, VSAC knowing mostly who has loans, right? I mean, there are loans that other people have in other places too, but
yeah.
And as people graduate, it would make sense for VSAC to be reaching out to folks to say, if you have a job in Vermont and are living in Vermont, you are now eligible for this as a way to pay off your loan. That seems like a no-brainer marketing piece or informational piece.
Actually, do you know if that's happening? I mean, that very well could be happening, and I just don't know that detail about it.
I don't believe that's happening. The marketing's been largely on the outside.
Would you take that back to VSAC, please? Thank you.
Just remember that this didn't flow through VSAC, it flowed through the Office of Engagement. And VSAC volunteered to help the Office of Engagement provide this, but I think it may be a good idea that Patrick and Scott, maybe they can put something together. The rest of the money out, and then we can see if that really helps pick it up.
Good idea.
Questions for Wendy? One thought, we were having discussions yesterday with Tim Tierney and Commissioner Jepson about the Montreal Trade Office that we have. We were also thinking it may be wise for us to start thinking about trade office in the Pacific Rim or in Asia, because of us becoming a tech hub.
Absolutely.
UVM and Global Foundries and again, it may be wise for us to invest money there to start seeing if we can get some of those businesses over this way.
I think that's an excellent idea, especially I think we've talked in here before that the only other place that's really doing any GAN work is Taiwan. Yeah. Yeah.
And the idea actually came up last week when we had the Director General from the Boston office of Taiwan in here talking with us. And
yeah, I think that sounds great. And I will take that back and share that with Kirk Dombrowski, because I'm sure that he would be happy to help support that in any way too.
Any other questions for Wendy? Okay, Wendy, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me go first, you guys. I'll put you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Leduc. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer at Vermont Student Assistance. Thank the committee for the opportunity to share our budget testimony today. You have in your packet a slide deck. I think in the essence of time, I'm going to skip around a little bit. I would start by just thanking the committee for all the work that this committee has done to help build the advancement grant program and to support all the loan forgiveness programs that we've been administering for the last few years. I think the results of that is we've helped a number of Vermonters pursue their education and add to the workforce. So we really appreciate the support of this particular committee. I won't go through all the different supporting programs that VSAC runs. I'll skip by those for a second. I'll stop on slide 4 around what's happening with higher education, which I'm sure this committee is fully aware of, but obviously there's a lot of things happening within the post-secondary space. So I'm sure Beth and others can talk about more fluently, but particularly for the lens that VSAC has, we know that there's changes to the federal loan programs, which is going to challenge some Vermonters to pursue their education with new limits on and caps on plus parent loans, as well as the elimination of the grad program. So we're actively working with colleges in Vermont to help navigate that path and see how we can be of service to Vermonters. There'll also be new initiatives coming out of the federal government about institutional accountability that will also have similar pressures that will impact students about their ability to pay for education. So we're watching all of that as we move forward. Jumping ahead a little bit to the slide 7, before we get into the specific budget, I just want to share with the committee a really exciting thing that we've been able to do. We, as you know, have 3 different federally funded grant programs where we work with middle school kids, high school kids, and Vermonters across the state to help navigate their post-secondary experience. One of the challenges we have at every level, whether they're adults or high school students, is when they get those award letters from 5 or 6 institutions, it's really hard to figure out what they all mean. They don't use the same language, and they're all very challenging. And there's a lot of positivity to that, right? The schools get to post their offer in the way that makes sense for them, and that's appropriate. But it still creates a challenge when they all look different. So we built a tool called Award Advisor that anybody can download for free. There's no advertisements, and you don't have to play a bubble game for 30 seconds before you can use the tool. So you sign up very simply, and all it allows you to do is scan those award letters, and then we built a machine learning engine behind the scenes that translates all those terms into common language, and then we present it back to the student or that parent or that school counselor so they can look at these award letters in a way that they use common terms across all 5 of them. Also has some built-in comparison features so that within the tool they can compare different award letters and see which one is better for them. So it really simplifies that process quite a bit, and it's going to hopefully help parents and families navigate that, make good choices for themselves around the right education, and hopefully help school counselors not do that kind of grunt work, but be talking with their students at a higher level about what's the right choice for them. So this will be a product that's will be being used in Vermont this spring, we hope, really actively, and we've got a number of partners across the country that'll be rolling it out as well. Excited about that. On our budget request, which is on slide 8, we are requesting a 3% increase to our base funding. As an update, this past year, we have awarded every dollar that was appropriated to VSAC out to students and families to pursue education or training programs. So that includes the grant program for traditional college, that's full-time and part-time, as well as the advancement grant, the trades program. So we have kind of just recently stopped accepting applications for those programs because we've expended all the funds. So we really appreciate that appropriation so we can help Vermonters. So that's a 3% increase of about $812,000. In addition, we are requesting the Aspiration Program, which is a unique program that we've created with Vermont institutions where we go in for 3 or 4 years and help that school navigate some of their challenge areas around aspirations and post-secondary attainment and training program access. We have authority now to use $300,000 out of our base. So this is not additional money. This authority to use $100,000 more for that program so that we continue to help schools. That's been at $300,000 for a couple of years now. So the cost of that program is growing just a little bit, and we want to be able to support schools appropriately. The dual enrollment college stipend, $84,000. We're requesting level funding for that. We have enough carry forward this last year that we think we can cover dual enrollment stipends for a year without any increase in funding, although we are seeing more students taking dual enrollment classes, which is great. And then we get into the Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program. Last year, you appropriated about $3 million. We were looking for an increase in that, and that was what we presented to the governor. Obviously, we've got some challenges here with what's happening with Rural Health Transformation Grant. And so we're actively talking with AHS and DOH about that. And so we've got these funds that may or may not be needed depending on how that all plays out. This is going to be a transition year in some form. So we are still kind of figuring out if this is a year where we may still want to request some funding for these programs to help the students that are already in that particular pipeline not fall out of that pipeline and be lost into some other program they don't understand or something else. So we're still working with AHS and DOH on how to navigate all of that together. I'm sure one of us will be coming back, or perhaps both of us, with some updates on that program.
You talked to the healthcare committee too.
We have indeed. Yes, last week we talked to healthcare committee. In addition to that, we suggested that the mental health professional forgivable loan program, which this committee had a role in standing up, did not receive funding last year. Obviously, that is a workforce area that we want to see more people move into. So putting some funding into that particular program would be helpful as well. Again, there may be some connection to the rural health transformation grant there. So more to come on that. And then lastly, but probably most importantly, one of the things that we really want to focus on is the Vermont Freedom and Unity Scholarship that we, in partnership with VTSU on. Last year, we received $1.5 million in one-time funding to pilot that program. We've seen a really nice uptick there this year. I don't have the exact numbers yet because we're just finishing the confirmation of enrollment in this particular semester. So we're still collecting the data, but we've seen a really nice number of students that are now going and receiving education for free at VTSU, at least the base tuition for free. That includes full-time and part-time students. We're asking to increase that funding and move it out of one-time to 2.3. And we think we can move the household income level from the current $65,000 up to maybe $75,000 or $80,000 and really help more Vermont families pursue a full degree at VTSU. Let me stop there and see if there's any questions.
No?
The award advisor.
Yes.
How did that come about? Was that something that you just kind of took upon yourself, or something that was like funded or piloted? Or?
Yeah. VSAC kind of took it upon itself. We said, listen, this is a problem that we realize in communication with our outreach counselors, that we keep hearing the challenge with some of the background that I have and others have in IT and our learning there. We said, wait a minute, this is a problem that actually is not that hard to solve anymore, as opposed to waiting for the federal government or something else to solve the problem. We realized we actually have the technology to solve this. So we went ahead and just built the tool. Cool. Yeah, it is very exciting.
Good questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Beth? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My PowerPoint will be put on the back. Thanks so much. Thank you both for inviting us in. I am Beth Mauk, the Chancellor of the Vermont State Colleges System. Appreciate being here today. And before I go into my budget ask, I just want to give a little bit of a broader update on the Vermont State Colleges and what we've been up to. I think, as all of you know, the mission of the Vermont State Colleges is for the benefit of Vermont, and that is certainly something that I have taken to heart. It means that we serve Vermont, and what it means is that we want to be that trusted partner throughout Vermonters' lives as their need for higher education ebbs and flows. And we want to ensure that every Vermonter has access to high quality higher education. I have really good news on our numbers. So as most of you know, most of our students are Vermonters. So 83% of the students, both at the Community College of Vermont and at Vermont State University, are Vermonters. In addition, this year, our head count was up 1.4%. So we're still seeing enrollment increases. And even more importantly, our online enrollment was up over 10% this year. And that is showing how Vermonters who maybe aren't close to one of our campuses or centers, or who have life's experiences, that they have to ensure that they have an ability to take college classes online. And we've seen a real increase with that. Just as we're talking about some of these enrollment trends, one of the things to really note is the fact that what we know is all generally Vermonters are older, but what we also know is that the average age of our students are older. So while we still serve traditional 18 to 24-year-olds on our campuses, in reality, the average age of our students is increasing. Right now, the average age of an on-campus student is about 23, and the average age of our part-time students is nearly 30. And that's really important to understand that what we are seeing just a totally different type of student that's engaging in our campus. And it means that their needs are different. So they need more flexibility. They need this ability for college to wrap around their life and not just for their life to wrap around college. And in doing that, that really has made us have to think more about how it is we're educating students in Vermont. In addition to serving students, though, we also have partners all throughout the state. First, I would like to talk about some of our community partnerships. So one of the things that the legislature has always talked to us about is the fact that they want to ensure that we continue to have 5 vibrant campuses at Vermont State University. And one of the things we've been really looking at is how, as the demographics of our students are changing, we can ensure that those the buildings that we have are making sense. And so I'm excited to bring some news of that. So one of the things that happened this year is we've been working in collaboration with Down Street, and we will be getting senior housing up on the Johnson campus this year through a Sanders CDS and some other funding that they have received. So really excited about that. You might have seen that in the news lately. In addition, on our campus, the Johnson Health Center on the Johnson campus, the Johnson Health Center is working with us right now so that they can move from the flooded area in Johnson up to our campus. That will allow our students to have opportunities, not only to have healthcare that's very close, but also potentially internship opportunities. In addition, at the Linden campus, we are working with a regional education partner who will look to rent the Harvey building on that campus. Again, looking at how we can surround ourselves with our community and really ensure that we are continuing to have vibrant campuses, but also are serving the needs of our community. And in addition, we've also been developing an apartment complex on the Johnson campus to see if we can't start to have some housing for our students. So if our students have different housing needs, then what we know is that we can't just have our traditional dormitories, but we need also apartment complexes. The nice thing about this is it actually can parallel as community housing so that our students can be there using these apartments if they need them. But if the students aren't using them, we can also rent those out to community members. So in addition to our communities, we also work with regional businesses and statewide businesses throughout the state to ensure that we are really being the workforce engine of the state for Vermont. A couple of programs that we've been working on at CCV, they have a program called Career Pathway Entry Program, or CPEP. Currently, there are 21 employers working with us on that. What's nice about that is it takes Vermonters who maybe haven't had any post-secondary education and are looking for a career that might require some. And this allows them to start taking some college classes at CCV. At the same time, they can be trying out a variety of different internships so that they have an ability to see what it is they might like. We also have seen great uptick in our plumbing and electrical apprenticeships at Vermont State University. So very excited about meeting the needs for those trades here in Vermont. And then just very recently, we received a word of 2 congressionally directed spending programs from both Senator Welch and Senator Sanders. Senator Welch has provided us with $2.5 million for a composite certificate. So composites are the materials that will help us make some of the machines lighter. We're working in collaboration with Beta to determine what the best certificate program is for that so that we can train folks on how to do it, and then they can go to work at Beta or other employers around the state. And Senator Sanders has provided us with funds to really look at some rural healthcare initiatives. So looking to see how it is we can train nurses around the state, especially in very rural areas where sometimes the numbers just don't always make sense for class size. And that the Community College of Vermont is really looking at what are some, not only just filling the classes for now, but what are some innovative things that we can try so that we can satisfy those. For our budget ask, we did ask for, and the governor has recommended a 3% increase to our base budget. In addition, we did ask for one-time funding for a micro-credential certificates, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The governor did not recommend that in his budget. But next, we also asked for an increase in our allied health funds. So as you know, the Vermont State Colleges has positions in nursing, education, respiratory therapy, dental hygiene, and the salaries for those folks really are a challenge for us to both recruit, but then also retain faculty throughout the state. So these funds help us to do nursing faculty salaries, to do clinical salaries, and also just some training programs around the state. For the last many years, we've gotten $1.5 million for that. We are asking for a significant increase in that this year. This is a grant, so this is not in our general fund. It's coming through Medicare funding. But as we've seen an increased need in nurses and dental hygienists and the increase in the amount of salary that we have to pay them, this is something that would really be of benefit both to us and around the state. And then we have requested through the capital fund $1 million for help in really looking at how we can get some site work done for the apartment complex in Johnson so that we can get that ready to be ready for a capital stack so that we can bring in a private person who can build the apartment building for us. So that was our budget ask. Just a little bit more on the micro credentials though. So and the example I'd like to use is our teacher education program. So I think as many of you know, traditional teacher education programs are 4 years. Students go to college, they go out and they do student teaching and pre-student teaching experiences. What we know right now is that in the state of Vermont, there are 7,000 teachers that will be needed over the next 10 years. And so just looking at teacher preparation in the traditional manner that we've done probably isn't going to hit that mark for us. And so we've been working with the Agency of Education and the Department of Labor on looking at how we can have a program focused on paraeducators and other working adults who have a job somewhere and can start at CCV, perhaps get a paraeducator certificate, which CCV is working on, and do some of the pre-service teaching and even student teaching in their actual employers' work of business where they're working. And then what we are looking at doing is then having those students transfer to BTSU. So just looking at how we are looking at these programs differently. It does mean that we sometimes have to change the way curriculum's delivered. So not a different program, but the way curriculum's delivered, maybe looking at how we can pay some of these apprenticeships. So the teacher preparation one is just one example of many that we would be looking for. And then what we're also doing is we are supporting VSAC's request for $2.3 million for the Freedom and Unity Scholarship. That has been a real boost. One thing I just want to mention, as we were talking about this, we have noticed a real uptick in the number of students who are online students who are coming to Vermont State University this year already. And what you'll have to remember is that while the traditional path for students is you just come in August or September and then you go through, but when we have non-traditional students, they can come in at any point. And we've had, in addition to that August start, we've had an October start and a January start, and we'll have a March start. And we are seeing upticks in the number of students who are taking us up on that. And we think that it's not only that online education piece to this, but it really is this ability of us to be able to have the Freedom and Unity Scholarship. And we think that would be a real asset to folks around the state of Vermont who a lot of times for which the cost of an education really is the biggest barrier to them even entering the education space. And then I also want to talk just a little bit about flexible pathways. So for many years, the legislature has supported through the Ed Fund things like dual enrollment and early college. Those have been real assets to the students in high schools who maybe only have a course or two to go in their senior year in high school. And then it really helps them to be prepared for college and maybe just transfer to college a little bit quicker and with a little bit more ability to be successful. So we know that there have been questions this year, especially about early college. We are excited to be working with folks in the House Education Committee who we really think can help us. We really think we can work together to maybe meet some of the unintended consequences of the early college program, but we're very excited about what has gone on with that. And then my last picture, is a picture of a woman. So this is from a graduation at the Johnson campus in May. And I watched this woman come across the stage, and I first couldn't figure out what it was. Her cap and gown seemed funny, but she had her child with her walking across the stage. And this didn't just only happen at Johnson. People from all of our graduations were bringing their children and walking them across the stage. And really, this is why I do what I do. It's so exciting for us to be able to have a transformational experience for our students. And I think when someone wants their child to come and participate in, hey, I did this, I think it really just shows how much it impacted them. So those are all the things. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
A lot of questions.
Okay.
Glad you're here too from VSAC. So when we're talking about early college and dual enrollment, what are the metrics that we're tracking and how do we measure whether it's successful? Are we, when we design a flexible pathway that's intended to support all kids and only some kids are taking advantage of these, then we're not meeting our goals. And so I'm just wondering who's tracking that and who's getting the reports on how these are working.
So we do supply a report to the legislature every January. We just wrote that, and I can make sure that everybody on this committee gets a copy of that. I know the legislature gets it as whole, but I don't know exactly how it's distributed. Some of the questions that you have, what we know is that many of a great percentage of the students who start in early college then continue on in the next semester. So these percentages of retention are like in the 90%. So we know that the students are very successful in the courses that they're taking. And because of the great retention rates. What we also know is that the percentage of students who are on free and reduced lunches, there has been a significant uptick in the percentage of students who are on free and reduced lunch who also are participating in the early college program. Right now, so for this year, about 1/3 of the students who are in the program are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And in addition, students who might be out of that threshold, but are still maybe in thresholds like that they'd be eligible for the 802 opportunity. Those numbers are also, we're seeing increases. So we know that we're seeing increases in students who might not otherwise be able to go to college because of an economic barrier are actually taking us up on this program. What we also know is that a great majority of those students are actually immediately going on to college. So in the early college program at CCV, there's the free degree promise for that. Many of those students go right and stay at CCV for that extra year, but there are a tremendous number of students who are in the early college program that also go on to VTSU. So we know that this is very successful for students and getting them into college. So we have really good success metrics with this program.
I guess what I'm wondering is, are we missing the kids we've designed these programs for? Or are we just making it easier for the kids who are already driven to go to college? And I don't know how to measure that. And I don't know who can measure that, right?
Yeah, I suppose, right. Yeah. How would you measure who are maybe the right students for this? I suppose one of the things, and so you all should know that in my career, like for 30 years, I have worked on early college programs in Pennsylvania and Kansas, and now here in Vermont. One of the things to remember for early college programs is they aren't for every student. So that's why it's so great that the legislature has designed these programs like this. Typically, there are some students, so in this legislation, there's also opportunities for students to go to a CTE or do other programs. And so that's really fantastic. And I would say that the mechanisms that we have, and I certainly could also defer to VSAC on this, for how we're recruiting students while working with guidance counselors. I mean, one of the big ways that we would know that a student would be a good fit for this program is through a guidance counselor who actually knows this student and who can help them to, say that this is the right choice. But, developmentally, even just some this is not the right program for some students. So the goal shouldn't really be that every student in Vermont is taking us up on an early college program. I think really what this program is designed to say is that every student has an opportunity to have opportunities that are important to them. So whether it be early college, whether it be a CTE, whether it's even just, I only have another couple classes in high school and I can do this. So I think this gives them options is really what the goal is for this.
Jonathan?
Thank you very much. I would like to ask about the housing conversion, which I think is kind of a new take on, I guess, the notion of senior housing on a college campus. My question is, if I assume that is expected to be an evergreen revenue generator for the system, do you have sort of plans for that revenue, like if it's to support ongoing operations, or if there are other initiatives that you are expecting to use those resources for? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the housing, so on the senior housing component, our goal always has been to take, so the building that we will be doing this out of, which is the McClellan building, actually is sort of slightly down the hill from the overall college. And so it has always been our goal to sell that building off and the land around it, and then Downstreet will own that, or whichever entity will own that ultimately. So the only funds we will make out of that is from the sale of the building. The apartment buildings or anywhere else that we might be able to do workforce housing, ultimately, yes, that would be a revenue generator. What we don't have a specific plan for how we're going to do this, but the whole idea is to take any kind of revenue generation that we can have and fit that right back into Vermont State University to ensure, and is that for educational programs? Is that for improvement to our campuses? Is it maybe for specialized scholarships? But that ultimately is the idea that that would become a revenue generator and a net contributor to the institution, so that we would have an ability to use those funds for things that we know are needed by our students.
So in both scenarios, then, of sale and of a longer term sort of resource, the ultimate allocation of those assets has yet to be determined. And that's just, I think, is what I'm understanding.
Yes, they would, we're thinking they will be a net contributor. We are going to put them into a fund and then, yes, figure out appropriate uses for those.
Really?
Thank you so much. This is all really great information. I was curious about, I was just looking through the CPEP pathways.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting and very innovative use of community resources and everything. But I'm also really noticing that a lot of the classes are taking place up in Winsky and Montpelier. So I think I'm curious about, that just led me to think about what kind of relationship do you have to the southern part of the state? And also my other question is, do you have a list of courses by campus?
Yes. So to your first question, so we have programs throughout the state, both at all of our centers and our campuses. So the CPEP program is specifically with the Community College of Vermont. And so there are 12 centers throughout the state where there are both on campus and online courses that are taking place at any given time. The reason you'll see those numbers are for two reasons. One, population density, but also this is where a lot of the employers are. So that's why you're seeing those courses there. But students, we also have hybrid options for them and online options so that students can be anywhere in the state and still be participating in programs like that. And one of the things that's nice for is potentially if there's a smaller employer that maybe only has an opportunity to have one or two internships, they have an ability still that those students can be taking classes with everyone else and still be around their still be involved in their internship. So that's what's exciting. We do have a list of, we don't have a list. What we do have is even online, one can go in and actually, and I can send to you the link.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to navigate to that and had a hard time getting there.
I have the link on my computer, so I will get it, but yes, you can.
That would be.
You can make choices and decide,
which see. But I just, I'm noticing that you have Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, that's very exciting.
Yes.
But I also noticed that the in-person labs are in Montpelier, which I guess I'm concerned about, or do you all think about just the amount of travel?
Yes, we do. Yes. No, we definitely do. And actually this rural healthcare grant the CDS that we just received from Senator Sanders, it is exactly to look at pieces like that, so that how is it that we can serve the needs around the state, but in these very rural areas where there sometimes there is not a big population density, how is it that we're still serving them? And yes, thinking about travel times is one of those. And again, it's also sometimes the number. So even potentially if we're talking about Brattleboro Hospital, you know, in order to become a nurse or some of these pieces, you've got to do a lot of different experiences. And so sometimes even smaller hospitals don't have all the opportunities for students to at the same time to participate. And so that is one of the things that we're really going to be looking even more at in the with the Senator Sanders CDS.
And with that, is there talk about partnering with CTEs and?
Yes, we've done a lot of talk with that as well. Yes.
Thank you.
So we didn't talk about the transition, right? I think this current year that we're in is the last year of the.
It is, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Give us an update on
So yes, so this is the last year. So I think as most of the folks in this room know, the legislature has been very generous to the Vermont State Colleges system over the last 5 years. And we received both an awful lot of funding, including a very large increase to our base budget, which we appreciate. But there was also what we were calling bridge funding. And so we were stepping it down every year. So FY26 is the last year of that bridge funding. So we received $5 million for this year. As you can see, we are not requesting any additional funding for next year. And while we still probably will need to help VTSU, there are still transitional things to be doing at VTSU. We do not foresee having to come back to the legislature for any other bridge funding that will be able to self-support some of the last little pieces of that transformation. So it's a thank you. And I think this is really a way that we can see that the legislature in stepping in and assisting us has really allowed us to not only survive, but really start to thrive in how we're thinking about how we're serving the needs of Vermonters.
Did you have any questions?
I've asked her lots of questions. Yeah, all the groups that we are being, received all the updates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming. Committee, let's take a 15-minute break. Sophie is going to be back at 3:15. Yes, the language is ready. So I think we can start final discussions. So we can go off live.